So here's the thing, my policy is that whatever you've got going on, if you've got a World War II vet who's willing to come share, then that goes to the top of the priority list, okay? So what we're going to do is we'll have a short conversation with Grady Lamb. He lives across the street from me and has been there for, well, as long as we've been there, but I think you've been there much longer. We've been there 11 years. Grady served in the Navy, and you can see that his years correspond to the Second World War. And so Grady is a World War II veteran. He served in the Pacific. And so we'll just have a brief conversation with Grady. Then what we'll do is we'll thank Grady for coming, and then you'll take your test. And the exam shouldn't take long. About half the questions you've already seen before, so those should go pretty quickly. And there's nothing that calls for anything longer than a short response. Okay, so then once we're done with the exam, then we'll trade and grade, and I still think we'll get out of here before the time given for the class ends. Okay, so that's the agenda. Anybody have any questions before we start? So we'll just go into a brief conversation with Grady. So Grady, come on up and grab this seat here, and we'll just have a conversation. Grady, tell us first, where did you grow up?
In Sebastian County, Arkansas, east of Fort Smith.
East of Fort Smith?
Yes.
And
Charleston, before I went to high school. Charleston, Arkansas.
And is that where you were when the Second World War started?
Yes.
In the U.S.?
December 7th,
Okay.
1941.
How old were you when the Second World War started?
41, I was 16.
16, so a little young. I think, did you have to be 17 to get into the military at that time?
Well, you could join at 17, but I went in at 18.
You went in at 18. Who's the first president you remember? The first U.S. president?
Hoover.
Herbert
I
Hoover.
remember him.
We said a little bit about Herbert Hoover. Well, let's see.
And then, of course,
Go.
Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Roosevelt, right? Well, let me. I'll put up. Oh, okay, I've got to bring this up here. Let me ask you. Do you remember what you were doing when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Yes, sir.
A lot of folks remember that. So
I was
what
in
do
the
you
Joy
remember?
Theater in Fort Smith, Arkansas, watching a movie.
You watching a movie?
Yes, sir.
And so what happened? Did someone come into the theater?
They made the announcement on the PA.
Yeah. And you knew you were 16 at the time?
Yes, sir.
So you knew if the war went on, you were probably going to be in it.
I was 18 on October 29, and I was inducted in December to the United States Navy.
In 1943,
Yes.
you went in. So here's a photo. Can you see that photo there about the bombing at Pearl Harbor? Can you see that?
Yes.
There. I mean, did that come to you as a surprise? Most people say they didn't even know where Hawaii was. They didn't, that they didn't know about these problems with Japan and all that. Did that come as a complete surprise to you when you heard about that? That Japan had bombed?
The attack was a surprise, but Hawaii and Japan was not. No.
Right. Why? Because there had been problems with Japan?
Well, I just knew where they were and knew about them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Right. But the attack on Pearl Harbor came as a surprise.
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir.
Did you have some friends who went into the military right away?
Well, I thought about it.
Yeah.
I think everybody did.
Yeah. Did you have any older brothers who went in the military?
No, I didn't have any brothers or sisters, but my mother had 3 brothers, and one of them was shot down in a Navy plane. One of them was shot up over in Anzio, and another brother was killed in Korean War.
Okay, so your mom
got hit pretty hard.
Your mom had 3 brothers. One was shot at Anzio in Italy.
Yes.
And did he survive?
Yes.
He survived?
He was crippled up.
He was crippled.
Yeah.
The other brother was shot down?
His first mission was a pilot in the United States Navy.
And was he in the Pacific?
He was in the Pacific.
Wow.
Missing in action.
And where was he? In the Philippines, or where was he?
I can't remember the little island, just a small island.
Boy. And then the third brother?
Before the Philippines.
And then the third brother was killed in Korea. That's a lot of
Hit that
sacrifice.
family pretty hard.
Boy, that's a
Now,
lot.
she felt pretty bad when I left, you know,
Yeah.
from that. Yes, I
Did she, well, I don't know, I mean, did she try to talk you out of it? Because
No.
you volunteered for the Navy,
No.
right? You don't get drafted into the Navy.
I was drafted
You were drafted, okay, by this time.
right into the Navy.
And so she just said, I mean,
Oh, no, she didn't try to keep me from it or anything. She was, you know, she understood. She just had to see me go for that reason.
yeah, I understand that. Let me play something that I think you'll recognize this here. One of the most famous speeches in American history here. Let's listen, I think you'll recognize this.
Today, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
So, you remember who that guy is,
Yes.
right? Yeah? What comes to mind when you think of President Roosevelt?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind, I saw him.
You saw him?
Him and Admiral Chester Nimitz came along and reviewed us. We stayed out there at parade rest.
Uh-huh.
About 2 or 3 hours, and they came by.
Where were you at the time?
Well, we just.
Were you in San Diego or Iwo Jima?
Pearl Harbor.
You were in Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor. Yes.
But in like 1945 or 1946 or
That'd been 44.
44 years there. So when you went to Pearl Harbor, you probably saw some of the wreckage still.
Oh, yes, Hickory Field.
You saw that.
And we've been back to Pearl Harbor 3 times, my wife and I, and we saw Arizona and Missouri and those ships.
Yeah, you've been back there.
Yes.
That's an important, I mean, it's an important moment in American history, but it's an important moment in your life, right? Because it brought you into the war. Tell us, what was your job in the Navy?
I was a signalman, topside.
So what does a signalman do? What would you do in a typical day?
In those days, we didn't have all this high-tech stuff, you know.
Uh-huh.
We used flags for semaphore.
Right?
We had one in each hand, and then we used blinker lights.
So does that look familiar right there? Can you see that? Can you see what that guy's doing there? He's got this kind of, you see he's got the 2 flags there?
Yeah.
Is that what you did?
Semaphore,
Yeah.
A, B, C.
So sending messages back and forth?
Yeah. And then we had the blinker lights, we used Morse code.
Right, using the lights to send messages?
Yep.
You were in the Navy 43 to 46, so about 3 years, probably a little bit more. How much of that time do you think you were at sea? Actually, out in the water?
Well, I took basic training in San Diego, signalman training in San Francisco, and then we went to sea.
Right.
And we went to sea.
And no vacations, right? You don't get to go home on a vacation, or do you get to go home on vacation?
We got crippled up pretty bad and came back to Oakland in dry dock.
Yeah.
We were there, I don't know, a month or so. And I got to leave and came back to Arkansas.
Oh, okay, so your ship did come back to the States.
I married that little lady right over there. 69 years ago.
Wow. So y'all been married since 45?
1945, January the 12th.
And now you said your ship got crippled, and you think that the ship might have been hit by a kamikaze.
It had a big hole in the side of it, yes.
Yeah, now I don't know if you can see it, but here's a picture of a kamikaze. We haven't talked about this in the class, but near the end of the war, when Japan was getting increasingly desperate, it turned to basically this tactic of suicide warfare. And so this plane is, you know, I don't know if it's going to hit that carrier or not, but it's on the way. Here's another kamikaze if you can see that. But you're not sure if your ship was hit by a kamikaze.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
I just don't talk much about it.
Yeah.
And we crippled back to Oakland, you know, it took a long time.
Wow.
Top speed was 8 knots per hour.
Yeah.
But we were there in dry dock for a long, long time.
Now, So you're sure your ship was hit by kamikaze? Can you see that photo there?
Yeah,
And so, I'm guessing now, it was hit by kamikaze near the Philippines or near Iwo Jima or Okinawa, or do you remember?
it was after Philippines.
After the Philippines, so more Okinawa, Iwo Jima, getting close to the end.
Closer.
But we've got these images of these missiles. You can see the missiles there flying through the air and the smoke all over the place and the planes. I mean, you actually have real memories of that, right? Of seeing the combat in the air and all that.
I
Yeah.
have lots of memories. I
Yeah.
have lots of memories.
Yeah,
Yes.
lots of memories.
We don't say much about it.
Yeah, I understand. You don't want to talk about it. Does the war come up a lot in your mind, even though it was 70 years ago? Does it still come up? in your
Not
mind?
really. I
Not so
tried
much.
I tried to let it by.
Just try to let it go.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, this part of the war that you were in was, the Germans were tough, but the Japanese were tough too. Right? And I've got a picture here. I mean, the Japanese in some ways might be more tough now. The guys you are up against, they're flying planes and they're riding submarines. You're not up against Japanese soldiers. But how would you describe the Japanese as an enemy? Like as an enemy. I mean, how would you describe them as an adversary? Or so, just as an example, in Europe, everybody knew the Germans were tough. The Italians not as much, right? How would you describe the Japanese as an adversary?
Well, they did. They made that attack on Pearl Harbor, and of course we didn't think much of them. They tried to get us.
So,
Real enemy.
real enemies. They hit us first,
Yes,
and so they started it, we're going to finish it.
that's the way I saw it.
And probably everybody else too. Yeah.
You got a good answer?
It sounds like a good one to me. It sounds like a good one to me. Now these guys here in boot camp, they're in boot camp in Illinois. That's where I went. But you
Great
went,
Lakes.
yeah, Great Lakes, exactly. You went to boot camp in San Diego.
San Diego.
Yeah. But these guys here, they're in boot camp and they don't know what's coming, do they? I mean, that war was a tough thing, wasn't it?
Didn't have a clue.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough.
And 18 years is pretty young to get tangled up something like that.
Yeah, did you hear he said 18 years is young to get tangled up and so forth.
That's right.
And most of the guys you worked with were 18, 19, 20, right? Same age as this group here.
Yes, yes. Of course, the boats are made for older, the bosses.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
guys in charge were a little bit older. Well, I'll tell you what, we won't hold you for much longer. Let me see. I want to ask you about this. If you see the sign here, the sign says, basically, we're getting ready to invade Japan.
Yes.
But as you know, we didn't have to invade Japan, right? Because the bombs were used and Japan surrendered. Where were you when you realized that, okay, we're not going to have to invade Japan and
We were anchored off Iwo Jima,
off Iwo Jima?
and we all thought we were going into Japan.
And what did you think about that idea of invading Japan?
I was ready to go.
You were ready. So they started, we'll finish it, and if we have to invade Japan, that's what that means. Yeah. Here's that famous picture from Iwo Jima. There. Are you one of those guys right there? I guess those are Army guys, so you wouldn't be.
They were Marines.
Uh-huh.
Marines.
Oh, Marines, that's right. Yeah, Marines, that's right.
I've seen them out there by you when you're here, Iwo Jima.
Do you remember seeing them out in
I've
there?
seen that.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
you were there. So when the news came that Japan surrendered, what happened? With the guys you were
We
with?
had a party. We had a party.
So you were ready to go to Japan, but you were glad it was over.
You bet you.
Let me just show this last clip, and then we'll see if a couple students have. Well, let me just ask this question real quick. I showed the students this the other day. Here's a poster from the war, if you can see it. It says, "Have you really tried to save gas by getting into a car club?" So in other words, don't drive cars by yourself, save gas. you know, and so that the guys fighting the war can have them get into their cars and the tanks and so on. And I told the students that during the Second World War, the country was probably more united than at any other
Yes.
time. And it says, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do, 100%.
Did you know when you were out in the Pacific that the folks back home supported you 100%?
Yes, I did. I
Yeah,
can feel it.
yeah. Kathleen, do you remember that? Was the country very united during the war?
Yes.
Second World War? Everybody.
Everybody.
Everybody's involved, right? Yeah, everybody's committed. So Grady, let me show you this little video clip here, and let's see if this kind of sounds a little familiar.
Waited out World War II's last tense hours. At the White House, President Truman, State Secretary Burns, and Cordell Hull stood by for the momentous surrender message from the Japanese. Radio men, sound and camera crews of worldwide newsreels kept vigil with Washington reporters. Then, after tantalizing hours of rumors and guesses, came the President's historic announcement, August 14, 1945.
I have received this afternoon a message from the Japanese government in reply to the message forwarded to that government by the Secretary of State on August 11th. I deem this reply a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of land. In the reply, there is no qualification.
The greatest news story of all time. Final unconditional surrender with the whole world waiting to celebrate BJ. In every town and hamlet across the nation, the story was the same. Chicago heard the news, and a hurricane of unrestrained hilarity blew through the windy city. This was how San Francisco greeted the news. The city by the Golden Gate engulfed in a tide of joy and relief.
So do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
I mean, you said you guys partied in Iwo Jima. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Well, Grady, your generation is called the greatest generation, and I think it's absolutely the truth, right? You guys grew up in the Depression, fought that war, you won that war, you built the economy that we still enjoy. And so I think it's absolutely true. So I want to thank you for that, thank your generation by thanking you. Maybe one or two questions from the students. Anybody have a quick question before we move on? Jonathan?
I was just wondering, like, what was your reaction when you found out about the atomic bomb that had been dropped on Japan? Like, how did you and, like, the men around you respond to that?
Well, we were glad the war was over. We might not have had a response for that, but we were pleased that the war was over, very much, because we were ready to go home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I was 19 years old then, and that's pretty young.
Mm-hmm. Ready to go home, and then what? Just real quick, what did you do once you got home? Once you got out of the Navy, what kind of work did you go into?
I went to work at the grocery store. 1946, we built a brand new store in Siloam Springs.
Siloam Springs, Arkansas.
And I stayed with it till about 2 years ago.
That's right.
In the grocery business.
Yeah.
And my
So-
wife stayed 65 years with me
Wow.
in the grocery. Good life, great life.
Grady, here's your chance to talk to a bunch of folks who are your age. They are now the age you were when you went to the Navy. Here's your chance to just tell them whatever you want to tell them. What do you want to tell these folks? And we'll end it with that.
And I think you make the right decision by coming to John Brown University. I don't know of a better place to go than JBU. And I just wish you the very best in the future. And thanks for listening to me today. Thank you.
Thank you. Here's what we're going to do. I think we'll, why don't we start with Shane? I want y'all to come and thank Grady, and then pick up your exam and go back to your desk, okay? And then once we've gone through that process, I'll escort Grady out. So Shane, come on up. So let's just take it row by row. Thank Grady. Come grab your test, go back to your desk, and start.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're really welcome. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Good luck to you. Thank you. Is that all? No, you're done. Every day. Every day. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. Good night to you. There you go. And there you go. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'll be back in a bit, y'all go and do that. Let's get Grady up.